podcast. You can now find us on Patreon at the Lunapod, where you can show your support for the podcast for only $1 a month. Or for a little bit more, you can get early access and bonus episodes, contribute to our podcast segments, and receive exclusive video content as we film our reactions, reviews, and discover new K-pop groups. Head over to Patreon now to join the community. We can't wait to chat with you. I don't think people understand the complexity of wreckers. They are a problem.
Yeah, why do we give them so much power? Hi, welcome to the Lunapod, where we talk all things K-pop. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Raquel. And today we are going over the types of wreckers. Before we get into anything, I think we should first go over the terminology of what is a wrecker. Traditionally, I feel like a wrecker is defined as someone who is threatening to take over your bias spot. We, however, call this a true wrecker because it's like the traditional definition of what a wrecker was and is most commonly thought of. But we've noticed that sometimes a wrecker isn't necessarily someone becoming a new bias. Instead, it's just someone who is on your mind a lot or even in your field of vision very strongly for either a very fleeting time or a very long time in some cases. Generally, though, I feel like wreckers are a very changing thing. But just to make it clear, they are not bias status, but they do give you that butterfly feeling and is someone that you admire or appreciate very, very much. And we decided to do this episode called The Types of Wreckers because we feel like there is different genres and different kinds of wreckers out there. Wrecker feels like an umbrella term to all the different kinds that you can experience. We talked about the levels of wreckers a little bit in our Types of Biases episode as well. If you want to know all of the different categories and the types of biases you can have, definitely make sure to head over and check out our Types of Biases episode. But we decided that the Types of Wreckers episode was very necessary.
And for our type of wreckers, the categories we have are talent, which is for their skills, whether vocal, rap, or dance. They're just so up there within their position for the group that they just completely wreck you. And they're ones that you kind of just constantly consume all their content. We have visual, and they're the ones that you can't get their face out of your mind ever. It's just too good.
Facts.
We have comfort, which kind of just a soft spot for them and make us question absolutely everything, just a different kind of weakness.
These ones are ones that really confuse me sometimes because I'm like, is this considered a wrecker? Is it a bias of some sort? I don't know. These ones are mentally confusing.
Then we have the forced wrecker, which these are just undeniable. They're basically everyone's wrecker, regardless who you are, how much you're into this group. Like everyone kind of just like knows this member. And then we have our legit or true wrecker, the troublemakers, the one that make you actually question your bias and sometimes kick them out.
Dun dun dun. Now, as we go over some examples for us personally to explain these types of wreckers, please remember that wreckers are very often a changing thing. My personal wreckers bounce around a lot. Again, they don't have to be, of course, but these are just the current wrecker mind states that we are in.
So first up, we have our talent wreckers. Again, these are the dangerous ones because we're constantly consuming their content based off of how skilled they are within their position for the group. And for mine, I have Taeyong of NCT. He's an absolute stage commander. You can't keep your eyes off of him when he's performing.
That's like the definition of what we talked about as a talent wreck, so yeah, understandable.
And then next, I have Kai of EXO. He's honestly just the full package. Both of those people we talked about in our Top Idols of K-Pop Part 2 episode, so I rant a little more there on those two.
I feel like we rant about these two a lot in general, but yeah.
I have J-Hope of BTS. Honestly, he's my definition of an idol and what an idol should, his performance style and the way he treats performances and just dancing, all that is just kind of how I envision idols should be. So he's definitely up there for me. I had a huge time whenever I was getting into BTS of I was very solid RM bias, ironic and funny now.
Yeah, man, that's changed.
What a journey I've gone on. But I had a big time where I was very J-Hope wrecked and questionably biased. It was based off of his talent and how much his passion for dance impacted me. So still to this day, a talent wreck.
No, like we said, these wreckers can be dangerous sometimes. They make you seriously consider.
They were tripping me up. And then I have Nikki of Enhypen. I feel like we kind of both are in this agreement where we think he's going to be, maybe not immediately, but he'll eventually be one of these next soloists, like stars, I need him to do solo work. It would be so amazing. Like, I can see it in my head, like, how good he would be. He needs to do it. Like, I don't know. I can't explain how good it would be.
Yeah, he just has every quality that makes a soloist really successful.
Like, he would just shine. Like, he shines so much in the group, and, like, all the members do. But he just has something about him. Star quality. Like, oh.
Star quality. What was that?
Star quality.
What was that show that we just watched recently? Star quality. Gem. It was...
Oh, you mean not Dream
Academy, the other
80K,
one. 80K. Yeah. Star quality diamond awarded by JYP.
Not him jumping companies.
Uh-oh.
And then last I have Hoshi of 17. We talked about him so much in our, like, what did we title that? Oh, Recreating Super M episode, because we kind of just mentally think he's a Super M member. I know he's not.
But he is.
But he should be.
Yeah.
Like, he is one of the only other idols that I'm like, okay, yes, like, you deserve to be up there because you're that talented, just so skilled, I can't even put into words. So I have just basically all of 17 are biases and wreckers, like, all over the place. But Hoshi stands out so much for his talents. So he's definitely one of mine.
I honestly would almost consider putting Hoshi in the undeniable wrecker category.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because I don't know anyone who doesn't love him.
Yes.
Exactly. I definitely have a few talent wreckers myself. The first one being Jongho from ATEEZ. His vocal talent is just undeniably incredible, to the point where sometimes my eyes are completely glued on him, and there was a brief time where I was really wondering what was happening because, okay, well, I need to explain myself. My ATEEZ situation is interesting. I have a very, very solid bias. Always have. Songhwa has always been the top there. But the rest of ATEEZ jumps around in my wrecker line like crazy. And they're not true wreckers because, like, my bias isn't going anywhere. But
yeah,
I was, like, really, really into Jongho, and my entire feed was always him.
Oh, I remember when you had your little Jongho phase.
Yeah. I mean, and, like, he's still there always, to be completely honest. But his talent wreck really got me thinking there for a second. And next, Kihyun of Monsta X. Similar to Jongho, I feel like Kihyun has one of the best voices in K-pop, and hearing him sing live truly made my brain turn to static. It's that, like, mouth agape dissociation during a concert type of thing that you can't help but wonder if you need to update your bias line or if you're just being talent wrecked. And last but not least, Hwanwoong from ONEUS. He has the best stage presence I've ever seen with my own eyes, and it's also so visible on the screens as well. He's just a master of facial expressions and exudes so much emotion in his performance, you genuinely just cannot keep your eyes off of him. And again, when your eyes are glued on someone, especially during a concert, it really makes you wonder for a second if they're a true wrecker.
The next category we have is visual rec. So these are the idols where your eyes are completely glued to them again, but for this time due to their amazing visuals, and kind of just questioning if they truly exist.
I feel like I have to start this one off with Yeonjun from TXT. I want to start off with the fact that he had a personal Instagram before any other TXT member, and honestly that kind of speaks for itself in this. That's a joke, but also his recent cover of Taemin's Guilty, like, I see you, wrecker, trying to trick me by covering my old song. I see you, but you can't slip past me. Like, genuinely, holy crap, this cover was absolutely amazing and a great example of why he is a visual wreck. He looked amazing on this stage. Second is Jaehyun from NCT. We have said this many times, but he is one of the most perfect looking people I have ever seen. Then moving on to Ricky of Zero Base One. Again, it's that question of, like, I don't believe he exists until I see him with my own eyes. It's just, like, mind-boggling to me.
He's one where you don't realize it until you see him in person. You're like, holy crap, he looks exactly like that, somehow better.
Which they always do. It always blows my mind. Whoa, that's scary.
It is. It's disgusting.
That's terrifying.
Like, the idea of seeing him in real life, it's fake. You know those videos, oh my god, of people doing the thing at WeBridge?
Oh, the
Shonu
goodbye wave thing?
It was specifically the one with Shonu and Hyungwon. Whenever you walk by, like, whenever they're first walking up, Shonu literally looks fake. Like, he looks like an AI.
That's crazy.
When they're walking up, because how perfect he looked. Ricky? The trill of my voice.
What? Ricky?
What are you talking about?
I can't even fathom it. Like, my brain sees pictures
He's
of
so
him and I
pretty.
just assume it's like some filter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't he's one of the new AI members. There's no other explanation.
He's from Superkind.
For real. Also, last but not least in my list, I have to put this here. Haran from OneWe.
Stunning.
Yes, I have never seen a more beautiful man in my life, and Haran is like an actual problem for me in the record line.
I need them to come over here so badly. So whenever they're finished up with their little enlistments, I need them to float on over here so desperately.
Yeah, but I'm also terrified because, listen, OneWe is slept on. OneWe has one of the best vocalists, has some of the best visuals, has some of the best
Amazing
connections.
producers.
Yeah, best connections, best producers. Like, they are heavily slept on. But anyway,
See, that's an issue for me too, because I cannot
Yeah.
see Gyuk live.
I'm
No.
telling you, OneWe is like an actual problem. Haran,
I love him.
an actual wrecker problem.
For my visual record list, starting it off with Hyunjin of Stray Kids, just one of those others where you're like,
Your brain can't like wrap itself around.
he's so unbelievably beautiful. Like, even that time where he was on live and he was like thinking there's a filter on because he looked so good, he's like, oh, there's no filter.
That's the biggest flex.
Like, are you kidding me? But overall, he's not a problem because, similar with you, Jongho, like, your bias is not going to change for that group. Mine did for this group from Hyunjin T. So he's not a problem. I already left him. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, I just can't deny how beautiful he is. And next we have Hyungwon of Monsta X. He's stunning. I feel like I'm going to say the same words over and over again for each of these people.
Well,
But
it's
like,
a
what else am I
visual
supposed to say?
Yeah.
He's someone where when you like initially look at him, you're like, yeah, he's cute. But then like if you're gonna properly sit there and get into Monsta X, you're like, wait. And he's honestly one of the top biases for a lot of people for a good reason. But just the shootout era, ground shaking, ground breaking, all of it, the ground's gone. They're just in a piss.
Ground does not
And you
exist.
fell through and now you're in love with the young one. Like, he's just, that era was so good to him. His hair, he looked, I'm not gonna say stunning. Moving on. Next I have Sunu of Enhypen. So this one's kind of interesting for me because I've always had Jay as my bias, but then I had a time where I was like, okay, like questionably double biased with Jungwon. And I always thought Sunu was like very cute and I always liked him a lot and he was like up there for me. But more recently,
I feel you
like
on
my
such a
mind
level.
has
Yeah.
been so blown, especially like I would say like, yeah, these past 2, maybe 3 comebacks.
Yeah.
His look has just completely changed. He looks amazing. Like in all these concepts, like he's being more, I guess, serious. Not that he wasn't before, but
He just had a very he had more of an Aegyo persona.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. And he seems to be like moving out of that. And it's just like really showing in his entire
Yes.
vibe.
And like I feel like I wouldn't say they have the same like personality or energy, but I would almost put him beside like TXT's Taehyun, where it's like just something about them was like very different, and then like a few comebacks more, wow.
We grew up suddenly. Yeah.
I don't know, it just, and again, like we had talked about his like his approach to Aegyo and like how he takes it very in a professional manner, like the way
Yeah.
he thinks of it. And so I feel like that mixed with like how much he's maturing just in general, he looks incredible, and I can't deny that he's such a visual wreck for me.
I honestly feel the same way. Like, I considered putting him here as well. I didn't know where to put him, but he's somewhere in this wrecker template. Like, honestly.
And he's one, like, I always save like my biases photos from concept photos during comeback eras for concepts, but I save honestly majority of his as well
T.
because he looks that good.
Good for him.
I had is it still there? Let's see. I had a wallpaper. Yeah, I had 2. I had that one.
Cute.
But like that was like from the concept
Oh,
turn.
my goodness.
Right?
Sanu is...
Oh, he looks amazing. Love
He
him.
does.
Baby Ramp. I could not make this list without putting Huyoung from SF9. I wouldn't be able to survive if this man ever looked me in the eyes. So we gotta be in nosebleeds for SF9.
Heard.
Because his aura and just like the energy he gives off, I can't handle it. I'll be forever loyal to Channy, but like I can't do this. I've been through too much with my journey with that group,
Getting to your bias.
weaseling
Yeah.
through bias potentials and landing. I can't do it, but I'll appreciate him in this way.
That's what
I'll
wreckers
give
are
him
for.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I have Hui from Pentagon. he just has such a satisfying look to him. Like, I can't even really explain it. And I have this note in here that says lip reference. Do you have an idea of what I mean?
No.
Okay. So what I mean by this, he does to me what Lip from Shameless does to me. Does that make sense?
Oh, I get it.
Think about it.
Yeah, no, see, none of you listening are gonna understand.
Yeah.
But, like, we had a discussion the other day about, like, Shameless, because it was, for some reason, it's been resurfacing in some of our friends and stuff, and people are talking about it. Anyway, so we were, like, talking about the characters and, like, who we liked, who we didn't like, and we were talking about Lip and how he was, like, we really enjoyed his character kind of a thing, and I remember you talking about that. That makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, I don't know. Something about him, they don't have the same personality at all.
No.
Nothing similar. But just, like,
the feeling
something
there.
about the auras, just something that they're giving off is the same, and I eat it right up.
I get it.
The vibes he gives during, especially during, like, Triple H.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Lip.
Yeah, especially the Triple H.
And then I will have honorable mentions. I have Ricky from Zero Base One and Wanbin of Rise. Both are just top tier rookie visuals right now.
Yeah, they're like taking the entire internet by storm. The next category is going to be the comfort rec. These wreckers bring you a lot of comfort, similar to a comfort bias, but they aren't necessarily bias status. I honestly can't quite tell you why. Comfort biases can be really hard because they mean more to you than just appreciating a member of a group, but you wouldn't consider them a bias. It's confusing, just like a very strong appreciation for their energy and the vibes that they give you, I guess.
And it's important that we say this because earlier even you were like, this is one where like I confuse this with potential bias a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so it's just funny because literally most of mine were either like original biases or like heavily questioning or like at one point maybe double. Like
that's funny.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of crossover with this one for me.
It's just like you just care about them so much, like in a different way. I don't get it.
And so I have RM of BTS. He's just kind of like my original comfort, one of my first biases when getting into K-pop. So again, was originally a bias, just kind of the comfort I needed at that time. And then Minhyuk of Monsta X. I couldn't do life without this man. Like, that sounds so dramatic, and I am being over dramatic and not serious. But I can't put into words how comforting he is. Like, you just need to watch like the smallest amount of like anything of theirs, like from variety shows, and you understand. Next, I have Connie from One Us. That's my bestie. If y'all don't get the reference.
Sorry.
No, just kidding. We went to their concert, saw him and Shion.
Literally ran into them.
Yeah.
If you want to hear that story, check out our concert review for One Us. But yeah, basically we're best friends.
Yeah, we claim that. And so he's just kind of a comfort in general, just his personality, it feels weird to say, his foodiness, how he's a foodie, loves food, and just like he was so good with that kid. Like, he just has a lot of comforting qualities to him. And then the next two are Suho from EXO and Kun of Wavy. Both of these have the same exact energy for me. A lot of teddy bearness going on. Just a cuddly safe space, if that makes any kind of sense. Both of these were really up there for me with biases and like just have been heavy wreckers from the beginning. At one point, like, I did think Kun was going to be my wavy bias. It was weird because I was like, oh, I can have like different biases for different groups, like, duh. But I mean, like, in the sense that Tin is in Super M, and that's like where I was like, oh, that's my bias for that group.
Right, so you can get away with having another.
So I was like, okay, like maybe I could change it up. I didn't, but Kun was very up there for that. And then Suho, I love him so much. So they're just kind of similar to me in that aspect. And then lastly, since we saw them live at the concert, I will give Saint Van from the AV my honorable mention here. Because I've never seen such, I know I just said teddy bear, but I've never seen such a teddy bear in real life.
For real though.
He just genuinely looked like he was having the most fun ever and just nonstop smiling and wanting to interact with fans and it looking so genuine. And it's just funny because he is like a big guy. Like, he's so muscular and huge.
Yeah.
Yet he's so like
smiley and like his like leadership qualities just like shone through the stage. Like, he was incredible. Like, VAV in general was absolutely amazing. But yeah, I totally agree with this honorable mention, to be honest. Some comfort wreckers for me, I have to start with Jin from BTS. This one really scares me sometimes. I'm like going to be extremely honest right now on this podcast. I feel so comforted by him, and I know that I can always turn to him for not only an amazing performance, but also his visuals, his humor, everything. And I have not had the chance to get into BTS as much as most ARMY has. Like, I'm still waiting for my kickstart moment.
Yeah,
you know
I feel
what I mean?
like, because you fell very face first into K-pop. Sorry.
No, I mean, I love it.
And so, and like BTS is a lot to get into. And like I did that early on in my K-pop journey, but since I just like lunged you into everything, I feel like the times you had alone to discover K-pop groups on your own, you don't have enough time to get into them.
And at the time when I joined, BTS wasn't doing really any more big releases.
Yeah, they
finished their Butter release, I believe,
Yeah.
and then they started doing their solo stuff, and now they're enlisted. So I never really had like an actual like full comeback.
And I got into them during quarantine, so I had all the time in the world to just sit and like go through everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here today. But
yes.
not like alive. On this podcast.
But if we want to be dramatic, sure. Oh god.
Dear God. So the things I say is like, you're like, what? But yeah, I don't know when we're gonna do it. Like, I feel like we should do it while they're away. But just so that you can quote unquote catch up.
Right. But the problem is I feel like if you are in it while they are actively doing something, you feel so much more involved. And it's almost easier to like it's almost easier to like be.
But by the time they come back, they're gonna be doing stuff non-stop.
Exactly. Which
so
like maybe that's a better it's almost like the new era of ARMY. Like maybe I'm going to fit that better. But anyway, the whole point of this ramble is to say that I am like strongly Jimin biased at the moment, but Jin genuinely might be a true wrecker. We'll have to see when the time comes. I'm very I'm very excited to see what happens with my BTS journey. Honestly, I have to wait for the right time. You can't force yourself into a group, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And second on my list has to be Hui from Pentagon, which I know we already mentioned him earlier. I love how we're like seeing different idols popping up in different wrecker places for each other. But if you have been listening to the Lunapod, you probably already know this story, but we got to know Hui through Boys Planet and developed such a deep love for him in every possible way. And that love has only continued growing. And I get so unbelievably happy whenever he comes up in conversation or we hear something random about him, or, you know, with his recent like solo debut, it was just absolutely amazing. And he just brings me a lot of comfort, so put him in this list. And last but not least, it's going to be Haechan from NCT.
Even his name is comforting.
It is.
Maybe it's just because I associate with him, obviously, but like just the sound of the name is very comforting.
Yeah, I just like everything about this kid. I say kid just because like he is like I don't know. Anyway,
how old is he?
I don't know.
Maybe he's like literally.
I think he's 23, 24.
Is like literally is older than you.
Way older than me. Yeah.
Let me see. I'm curious. I can't ever keep up with him. Yes, he's literally 23.
Yeah. Again, I just have a very, very deep appreciation and love for him, and I am just genuinely so excited whenever Haechan is on the screen. Every time we are watching anything NCT related, he just makes me very happy and is so funny and so incredibly talented on top of it all. Love his unique voice. Like, it is just a huge comfort in general.
We're going to take a small break and remind you that if you're enjoying this episode so far, make sure to follow the podcast and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss an upload in the future. And if you'd like to show some love, feel free to give us a rating as well. We'd really appreciate it.
This week's segment is going to be BM's Tip of the Week. Wreckers are the biggest issue when getting into a group and trying to determine a bias, especially with a group with a lot of members and with a lot of visuals. So our tip for this week is going to be to make a slideshow or organize a Pinterest board so that you can help narrow it down.
Now, I'm a Pinterest girly through and through, so I feel like I never shut up about it. So I have a big board for K-pop, but then I keep sections for my bias for the groups where I'll just specifically put them, and then I have separate sections for the group overall. So like with Stray Kids, I have a Stray Kids one with all the other members, like random photos I like, but then I have a separate Changbin one. So in the Stray Kids one, if I see like a certain person popping up more often, that's kind of a good indicator. So I feel like that's a good like way to kind of guess like what your situation is. If you're like leaning towards one person, then sometimes you might even save more photos of that record than your bias, and then you're like,
wait a second. And
there's an issue.
Here's the tricky thing about Pinterest. Pinterest is sly. She knows too much.
They know what you want.
Exactly. And so you'll be like, you won't even realize that you've been looking at this person a lot, but I swear, this is not based off of fact at all. Pinterest, don't come for me. I swear it's tracking your eyes because it will see exactly what you're looking at, and it'll start popping up more photos like that. And so if you're scrolling through your general home feed and you have a bunch of pictures of that wrecker that you were like, yeah, they're cute, I think it might be a bias. Pinterest knows. Pinterest knows you better than you know yourself. Yeah.
So other than Pinterest, we recommend a slideshow. We have this massive one that has a slide for basically every group that we have ever heard of, some that we don't even fully stand yet, but that's where we keep our current bias on there, just to kind of have it mapped out for ourselves.
And we can change it whenever, but yeah.
So I feel like that's a good way is to keep everything organized and like discover yourself, because half the time you don't see the records coming.
You don't. And also, it's kind of funny because you start to realize things about yourself. You'll realize you have a certain type or you tend to lean towards a certain person, and having them all like there to see together can sometimes be helpful as well. But in the end, the heart doesn't lie. You will know when you are truly being wrecked and when idols are actually becoming an issue. So again, just trust your gut. Also, being very realistic here, it's not that big of a deal. If you want to change your bias, you can do it every 5 seconds. You are entitled to that. So really, don't stress about it. This is just for fun.
Now, our next category are the forced wrecks. Like I said earlier, these are ones that you really have no say in, regardless how much you know this group, how much you know this member. They are your wrecker.
The first one is Felix from Stray Kids. And I feel like this one doesn't even need an explanation, because if you know Stray Kids, or if the random people who do not know K-pop, like I have a lot of family members and friends who don't know K-pop, but they know Stray Kids and they know Felix.
Yeah, everyone knows him.
Yeah.
It's the hair, it's the face.
It's the name, it's the
voice,
accent.
Everything.
Yeah.
And next we have I Am or Chungkyun from Monsta X. Just irresistible in every direction.
Switching positions, I like to rotate.
That's all I gotta say about that, man. Like, I don't even know what to say.
It does not matter who you bias in Monsta X, or if you know Monsta X at all. You know of I.M, or you've seen his face, or you've seen his work somewhere. Next on the list is Kai from EXO. Again, I feel like none of these need to be explained because you probably already know who these people are. That's why it's a forced rec. But Kai is probably the most popular member of EXO. To be honest, he is very well known for his solo work as well, and it's hard not to love him to death. There's also definitely a reason why he is part of Super M as well. And before any of y'all come for me, I'm not saying that he is the top member of EXO or the best. I'm just saying that he's very well known.
Next we have Jake from Enhypen. This one, if you bias him, you're like, where have y'all been? Because I feel like especially within these past 2 years, I'd say, he has shot up so much for so many engines in general and just like other K-pop fans.
It was especially for I feel like the Bite Me comeback, the Dark Moon, is that what their album's called? That era I feel like is what really boosted him, and people were like, oh my goodness, where have my eyes been? You know? Yeah. But I mean, this happened to us too. We were like, wow, what happened? And suddenly, yeah, Jake's an undeniable wrecker. And I feel bad. I should have been there the whole time. Shame on me. I'm sorry, Jake. And once again, we have to bring up Ricky from Zero Base One. Kind of like we said earlier, I feel like the entire internet knows him very, very well. And even if you don't know Zero Base One, you probably know Ricky, or you've probably seen his pictures somewhere online. And honestly, he's just, you don't have any say in it. He's in your wrecker line. You love him.
And then again, I have to mention Saint Van from the AV. I knew about him before I even knew his group existed. I remember seeing edits of him and fan cams or whatever from concerts forever ago. Probably 2 years ago now.
Dang.
And I was like, wow, who's that? He looks amazing. And that's all I remember. I just remember big arms and tattoo sleeve.
I love that.
Right? And so I remember hearing the group name and the fandom name. I was like, cool, but I literally did nothing about it. And here we are now. So he's definitely one of those where he sticks with you, because regardless that I wasn't into the group, I still had remembered he was an idol. Same with Only One Of. So before I got into them, I knew that one choreo move for the longest time before actually getting into them. So it's random things about groups or members stick out to you.
Yeah. Well,
so he's definitely one.
You start getting into this group too, and it doesn't matter who you bias, you're gonna love Saint Ben. You can't not.
His personality is literally so amazing. So kind of moving on from our set categories and types of wreckers, we're going into like our current wreckers and like our current situations as a whole with different groups. So we're going to talk about the ones that are catching our attention. So these are idols who, like I just said, catch your attention and are just kind of staple wreckers for you and make you nervous and kind of push your buttons, but they know their place and you're still loyal to your bias. So you're kind of like window shopping.
Yeah. And I love how you put the title of this, you put like our names and then quote, I'm looking. Because like it is like window shopping. You're like, I'm looking over here like I'm loyal, but I'm looking.
So my first one is Mingi of ATEEZ. He has been just a staple wrecker for me for the longest time. And the more and more we watch of them, go to their concerts, see anything that man does on stage, how can you not look?
Yeah,
That's honestly what he wants you to do. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm looking. And next is Minghao, or the 8 of 17. This wrecker has been all over the place for me. He was in my bias line, and I feel rude for kicking him out. But I have been on a journey, similar to SF9, with my bias, potential, whatever, situation going on with 17. It's a lot of members. Everyone will struggle. So I had it with DK, Wonu, and Minghao, but then I'm like, okay, but if we're looking at this, and using my little tip from Pinterest, whatever you want to call it, I realized leaning way more towards DK and Wonu. But Minghao's still like lurking, I'd say. He's a lurking person.
Fits in a good, yeah.
He's lingering.
It fits a perfect wrecker status.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I'll freak out over comebacks and I'll freak out over his parts, but like something's different. So I'm still looking. He's in this category. And next is Sungyuk from TAN. This happened during the concert. Now I knew going into it, we were like super new to the group still when we went to the concert. And so we were like doing all of our research the week before. So I knew he was going to be an issue going into it, and that was correct. Now I have this video on my phone that I'm convinced. Now listen, everyone says you have probably said that this idol's looking at you.
Right. You look back at your videos and you're like, wow, that was at me.
But I don't care what you say. Mine's real. Because I was like in the third row.
Okay, yeah, so stay tuned for our TAN concert review because this was an entire experience. I don't want to go into it too much. Stay tuned because it is a very fun one. But yeah, we're in row 3.
So that entire scenario made me delusional. And we're here today, and I'm still, like, my attention's at him from afar.
I feel like concerts, this is just an interesting thing to bring up in general, concerts can change your wrecker situation like a flipped coin. Like, it's crazy. You see them in person, you come out a new woman.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, okay, suddenly this is my new bias, and now blah, blah, blah is my wreckers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyways.
My next one is Subin from TXT. He was also originally a potential bias for me, and so he still like lingers a lot, and it's just funny because my friend, her bias is Subin, but Wrecker Yeonjun, and for me it's swapped.
That's fun.
So I'm like, we can appreciate each other's man. Cute. And then I have Jungwon and Isung from ENHYPEN. So Jungwon, like I said earlier, kind of just like duo bias there for a bit, so he is definitely always there for me. But also Isung in the past, like, few comebacks, very similarly, just been creeping up more and more. And I don't know, he's always kind of felt like the little it boy.
Yes, but
and
like
he's
in
been
a
such
different
a focal point, but in a different way.
Yeah, and I don't know how to explain this, but yeah.
Like he's always been like center on a lot of stuff, and so like he's been like shoved in your line of view regardless. So he almost seems like he should be like a forced wrecker, but I don't know.
But it's not quite. It's almost like in a K-drama. High school, he's like the boy every girl is like goo eyes over him, but he's also class president.
Oh,
and so it's like
he's the second lead boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's the second lead boy where you want her to end up with him, but she doesn't.
Yes,
that's who he's.
Okay, yeah, nailed it. And it's like I don't mean that in a bad way at all.
That's like a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing, but that makes sense to the whole wrecker thing.
And then also Han from Stray Kids. I'm a big 3 Racha girl. Love them to death. I feel like, honestly, all Stray Kids are wreckers.
Agreed.
And I just appreciate him so much. I think he's incredible. Love his personality. His visuals they're different, but they're so good, and I love them so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate everything about him. But since my bias in Stray Kids is Changbin, he's my ult, I'm like, this is a little different than window shopping. Like, I'm in the car parked across the street, looking through my car window into that store window.
Real
like
incognito.
I'm looking. Like, I looked for a second.
Right.
And kept driving. Mm-hmm. But I had to put him on
No,
the
that's
list.
what happens when you have an ult in the group.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so undeniable that it's like, yeah, I'm gonna appreciate all these members, but your ult's your ult. No, now that you say that, Stray Kids really is a bunch of wreckers.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's why I've been
Like
struggling
Felix,
so bad.
we said, like, literally most of them are in this episode.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and like personal tea time, I've had a rough journey with my Stray Kids bias. It now makes sense because I tend to be OT. And now talking about this who's standing out or I'm looking category, what does this mean for a usual OT stan? Honestly, bouncing between members like you do wreckers still happens in my OT groups as well. So I will be heavily leaning towards certain members in my OT groups. And then, but like at the core, I'm still OT.
Yeah.
I'm just like highlighting or showcasing a certain member for a select amount of time. Sometimes it's a long time and sometimes it's a short time. But like it usually bounces between them, which makes sense. And usually that's how I know I end up being OT is because I'm like, wow, I can equally divide my attention between them all. Not my vocal fry. But there are some ones that I do have to point out for this section. And the first one is going to be, of ATs. I feel like I am constantly talking about this man and kind of a hot topic right now. If Songwha was not my ult bias, he is solid set in stone ult bias, would be causing me major panic. He is just like absolutely perfect, and there is never a time where I am anything but overjoyed to see him on my feed, on my screen, doing literally anything. So I absolutely love him, and I definitely, again, like I said, bounce between all of the members when I'm in, like, I'm not OT for ATs. This is confusing. I feel like I'm confusing myself. But if I didn't have an ult bias in ATs, I would be OT.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So I do bounce between the ATs members. Is definitely like a stronger one, especially lately. Also, just like you had in your list, I also have Isung of Enhypen. And oh boy, was this an issue for a second. I was really concerned here that I was about to do a bias change. But in the end, I always go back to Sunghoon. Like, it's just almost like a comfort thing. I just, I'm like, let me go over here and Stray. And then he's like, all right, come back now. Like, you had your fun. Get back here. And I'm like, okay. So that's where I'm at right now. Also, Young of Wavy. I was really, really enjoying his energy for a little while, and honestly, he fits my bias stereotype super well. But I was so solidly Xiaojun biased from the very beginning before I even knew it, and before I even knew NCT. Like, it was a deep soul thing that I didn't even properly understand. That unfortunately, this was kind of fleeting with this, like, oh, Young's my bias. I still very much enjoy him. I love all of Wavy, but yeah.
Now the time has come for us to talk about our top wreckers. These are the legit, oh no, they're an issue wrecker, we're gonna have a problem wrecker. So we have previous examples and current examples. So for my previous example, I have the fact that Yoongi just secretly wrecked Namjoon completely out of nowhere. I've said this like in one of our first episodes, I feel like it's been a while. So I was RM biased, and then I bought photo cards, like fan-made photo cards from Etsy. A lot of them were Yoongi. I was like, are you like sugar biased now? I'm like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, what are you talking about?
It throws all of the Yoongi PCs behind shoulder.
They were majority him. And
Yeah.
I was talking to my other friend, and by the time I came around, like, realized I'm like, oh, I'm being stupid. It's literally Yoongi, like, 100%. And I told my other friend that. She's like, finally, I've been waiting. Like, she knew. She's like, I knew. I'm like, you're cute. You should have told me, but whatever.
It's adorable. You know what I just realized? That was the IRL version of a Pinterest board. You saved all these photos. You bought all these
Literally.
PCs. Didn't even realize you had so many saved, and then looked back at all of them. And you're like, wait a second.
Now I just do it virtually. And then my other one was my intense switch between Hyunjin to Changbin and Stray Kids. That was also like kind of out of nowhere, but like I saw it coming a little more than my BTS one. Like, I remember, I still feel like it was early on because we were still in like God's Menu era, and I was watching those dance practices, and I like sent the video to my mom. I'm like, guess which one's my bias? And then I don't even know which one she ended up choosing. I'm like, the one with long hair, duck. That's like, I do like guys with long hair, and like Hyunjin had long hair at the time, and so I was really into him. But then I don't know what actually happened. And then Changbin was there, and like that's it.
Suddenly blind
Tunnel
to the
vision.
rest. Yeah.
Complete tunnel vision to Changbin. And so yeah, I still appreciate Hyunjin.
We've been digging ever since. That tunnel's just getting deeper.
Yeah. And then my current main wreckers, I would say, are Doyoung with NCT, And forever ago in our NCT concert review, I'm like, in another lifetime, I'd be a Doyoung girly or blah, blah, blah.
That came back to bite.
So about to eat my own words because I think now I would probably say like I'm double biased for 127 specifically, but like Johnny's still like so much there. Like it's very much like a double, like very equal. There's no like, you know.
Yeah.
My next issue is still within NCT. It's with Win of Wavy. This honestly got worse after watching Sweet Games. I really shouldn't have done that to myself because I was already in a rut. I was already like in the win hole. Purchase words. It's just my face. After I said that, I heard it like
the cringe. The poor choice of words. Oh, I'm dead.
So I was already falling down this hole, Alice in Wonderland style. This was just, I feel like, another ongoing issue. I wouldn't say it was lingering and brewing in the way that Yoongi was. It's like kind of similar, but not really. Like I've always had an eye on this kid the entire time. He's been here in the peripheral. And this is where I'm going to insert an Abby Lee quote.
Abby Miller.
An Abby Lee Miller of Dance Mom quote. And you're like, girl, what's that mean? You'll hear. Abby Lee Miller once said, "You always need someone to threaten you, standing beside you, pushing your buttons." And for me, that's win-win.
That is like the quote of this episode.
Right?
Abby Lee Miller, did you know you were talking about K-pop wreckers? She didn't even know she was leading this episode.
Then my other current situation is Wayne and Davin of Zodiac. Honestly, I just need so much help with this. I feel like it is one of those situations that only a concert could solve at this point, / make it worse. I have no clue because I've had such a solid like bias line for them with at one point Bumsu, but I was like, okay, he's kind of like my Minghao of the group. So like, okay, still appreciating, but like, no. That sounds rude, but you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
So this is like my current bias lines. Like, why do I have this in my record situation? But I'm saying like, whoever isn't the bias here is the wrecker, and such a big one since I'm so confused in this current state with them.
Right.
It has been such a back and forth. If somebody asked me right now, I'd probably say Devin, but then I watch a video and I'm like, Wayne, stop. So, unfortunately, only concert can help me, I feel like. So hurry up and come over here. And I've only had a few groups where I've had more than one bias, like Monsta X I have 2, and Hype and I had 2 at one point. EXO, I'd kind of say like 2-ish. Depends on what day you're asking me. 17, I have had like a bias line situation, and obviously with Zodiac. So I feel like I usually am good about eventually choosing 1, 2 at max. But yeah, these are my issues.
I feel like I almost get out of things easy being so OT because a lot of groups I end up being like, nope, I love them all. So I'm like, I don't have any like, it feels like a cheap way out. But it's not. I genuinely couldn't pick one.
I get it because there's like been like maybe I would say out of all the groups maybe 2 where it's similar to you with ATs. If my bias did not exist, then I would be OT.
Yeah,
Whereas
and that's just
others,
how I feel with other groups. Yeah,
with others I would probably choose another bias, but yeah, I'd probably only have like 2. So I mean, I get it.
and it's weird because like when I'm starting to get to know a group, I usually right from the beginning can tell if it's going to be OT or not because I genuinely have like such a love and appreciation for all of them that I'm like, there's no way there's going to be a bias here, and it's just kind of weird. It's just like a feeling that you get. So I don't know. Anyway, some previous examples for me. Let's start with the entirety of Ace. Technically, they all kind of wrecked each other before I decided I was OT with them. I was like, again, kind of like we were just talking about, I was trying to choose a bias. I was like, oh, like I'm really into this person. And then the next week I was like, wait, I'm really into this person. And then I just went through every single member and I'm like, no, I'm OT. This is undeniable. And then I have my entire Stray Kids issue, which I briefly touched on earlier in this episode. I started off as a Bangchan bias.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I know. With
Just
where
like,
I am now.
Well, and it's just funny because, like, if you were to come up to me and say you're Bangchan bias, I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, you're not.
Same if I were to come up to you and tell you I'm Hyunjin bias.
Right. It just doesn't
And it's just funny
fit.
that's Stray Kids.
Yeah. Stray Kids is hard. And then it kind of switched to like Jisung for a second. I was kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling him. And then it switched to Sungmin, and I was really like, you know what? I think this is him. And then I finally landed on IN, and I was like, you know what? This is it.
That was
this is where
that
I'm
was
set.
post-concert too.
Yes. And I was like, this is where I'm feeling happy. And then lately, I've just been, Felix has not been out of my brain. And I think part of me is like, he's everyone's bias. So that's silly of me to say he's my bias. But I need to get that out of my head because that's not true. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if they're your bias, they're your bias. There's no real, like, again, there's no stigma here. There's no, like, there shouldn't be. So anyway, I'm really confused about it, and honestly, I feel like my Stray Kids bias changes a lot on my emotions. So I feel like I'm still up in the air, but if someone were to ask me right now in this moment, I would probably say I'm double biased between IN and Felix. Because again, you would say, why aren't you just OT with Stray Kids? They don't give me the same feeling as my OT groups do. I know there's a bias in there. I just don't know where it is quite yet. But like, again, I really don't know how to explain that, but when I'm OT, I know. Stray Kids, I'm not OT for. Not saying that I don't love all the members of Stray Kids. This is making me sound so bad.
This is
I
me
love
whenever
them all.
I was talking about like being 40 years old.
Exactly, yeah. I'm like, I love them all. They're all fantastic, but there is like a bias somewhere. And then also, I have to talk about Gino and NCT Dream. This was just a slap to the face, duh, kind of wreck to bias situation. I was, for some reason, again, I feel like this is similar to what is happening with Felix right now. I was like, no, he's the traditional, like, everyone's biased, he's so attractive, he's so talented, like, you can't be that person. I'm like, I'm a Gino bias, blah, blah, blah. And then I really just, like, got over that hump for a second, and I looked at it, and I'm like, wow, I'm stupid. I am so Gino bias coded that it's, like, it's ridiculous. So that was just kind of like a dumb moment there, but we got there and we're happy about it. Now let's talk about my current main wreckers. I am currently OT with Zero Base One, but Taeray is really, really standing out right now, and I'm wondering if it's just a highlight situation happening or if it's an actual bias slipping in here. But I was side-eyeing him from the beginning, like Boys Planet days.
I feel like that's a sign.
I know, right? And like certain other members were so on my mind that I really just didn't entertain this thought very much. But as time has passed now, he's just growing like a little seed that got planted. And every time I see new pictures or news about him, I get more and more intrigued or impressed. And so yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen with this. As of right now, I still stand as OT for Zero Base One because I'm honestly just so attached to every single one of them. Because again, we've talked about this before. We feel like I grew up with them, like through Boys Planet. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with this. And again, I know I just talked about Felix, but I need to expand on this a little bit more because Stray Kids is just, it's giving me an aneurysm. I swear. Yes, and I need to take this back to, I think, what was the beginning of this entire issue. We've talked about this story before, but long ago, we went to a Cup Sleeve event, and there was this girl that was like, can I guess your bias? And we were like, sure, go for it. And she looked at me and she said, Felix. And I was like, haha, no. But then that seed planted in my brain, and I just don't think it's ever left. Like, she did something. She changed the directory of the timeline. She jumped in that Stray Kids timeline and, like, messed some things. You know what I mean? Anyways.
It's like, I'm always curious if I wasn't, like, with Changbin, if I would have been, like, more, like, by what she said.
But since you are old, it's like you don't see past. Yeah, I get it. And like genuinely, I just feel like I've probably always felt this way about Felix. I'm just trying to convince myself I'm not, which is stupid. Because again, this is not that serious. Like I can just say I'm double biased, or I can say whatever. You can choose whatever you want. But I don't know. I'm just having a conundrum. I feel like I've probably always deep down feel like I have been Felix biased, and I've just keep like pushing it aside for some reason, and that's terrible of me. But anyways. Help. Send help. Stray Kids biases give me heart palpitations. I'm, about to check my pulse, make sure I'm okay, because it makes me stressed. Stress kids. So as a little bonus before we end this episode, we are going to talk about ult wreckers. Now this is a hot topic. Listen, we have 2 ults. And it's kind of unconventional. Ults are very rarely changing, to be completely honest with you, but they can. Ult means commitment though, so I feel like it very rarely happens. Like that means you are very committed to them, you love them over everyone. But recently we talked about this very fleeting idea that there may be ult wreckers. This is not a solid thing yet, we're honestly still figuring it out, but I just wanted to throw this in here at the end of this episode because I think it's kind of interesting.
So I do kind of technically have a previous example of this, in the fact that at one point I was like, oh, like BTS is my ult group. I was heavily into them, as like so many K-pop fans are. But then at one point I was like, I still do really enjoy them, but I don't know. I saw a lot of posts at one time. They were kind of like, I don't know, it almost was like sad and nostalgic feeling of like people who used to be very into BTS, but then like moved on to other groups. The edits were very dramatic, but it was like kind of a sad thing. It's almost like you're not growing up. I'm not saying if you want to grow up, you need to unstand, but like just kind of like moving on to something different that's more currently you or whatever. And those were like so emotional. I was like, oh, like it does feel like something I grew up with for a bit and now I've moved on. Kind of like
it's nostalgia in a nutshell.
Like in like a One Direction kind of feel. Like
Yeah.
that love is still there, but that's like I've moved on. So I don't know, I kind of got to that point. I still heavily love BTS. Like one of my olds is still in the groups, like duh. But I was like, I kind of want to change. And so I had thought about Victon for a good bit. Like I was kind of in between a few different options, but I did land on Monsta X as my old group. That just became severely undeniable for me. And funny enough, with Victon, I also had like a hard time because Hanse was so on my mind to where I'm like, is he like wrecking my ult right now? Is that even an option? Like,
Right.
what is happening?
That's before we decided 2 ults were
Yeah.
even a possibility. Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we're stupid. We can have more than one ult. I don't care what anybody says. Like, I know ult's supposed to be like a one thing, but
It's
no.
it's undeniable. I
don't
cannot
care.
look at both of my ults and say that either of them are not an ult.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that.
So Hanse, I would have like Hanse and Victon as a whole were kind of just like ult group and bias wreckers at a point. And so yeah, in case you need Monsta X, Yoongi, Changbin, those are my ults. And then I feel like you brought it up more recently of like Jungwoo from One Pact, who was like from Boys Planet, is kind of like an option up there as well, but I refuse to do 3. I can't do that.
Not yet. Maybe we'll get
She
there
said
someday.
not yet. I can't do that.
There's no rules. There's no rules here.
I think I made a rule.
There's
John will listen to this.
Well, and you never know, like a year from now, who knows how you're gonna feel with your current situation
Oh my
too. You know
God.
what I mean? No, I know. No, I know.
Yeah,
I
that's
get
so
it.
disgusting.
I get it. But like
That's nasty.
that, I know, and that's why this whole topic is
isn't that
controversial.
crazy though? Because like I had a friend in high school. She was like the K-pop girl. Like everyone knew she was like into K-pop, and she was like my main friend in the group that was into it. And we would watch things with her. Blah blah blah. She was so obsessed. Then she went into college, and like I'd say a year into college, none of it. Like just complete dropped all of it.
Yeah.
And like she was so into like BTS, EXO, GOT7, like Shiny, and so much Taemin.
Yeah.
Like Taemin and Kai were her people. And then like just out of nowhere, no more. I'm just like, that's so interesting because I can't see myself doing that anytime soon. Like I'm sure eventually, like, you know, you just grow up and you just have different interests, your interests change.
Right.
But that's crazy to think. That makes me so sad. But again, like I just said with One Direction.
Right.
It's still like
You still love it, you still
Yeah.
appreciate it, but you're just not actively following it anymore.
Yeah.
And like, no, it is kind of like, not to get emotional on this episode right now, but like, it is an undeniable thing of like, someday it'll probably happen. And like, because I know personally, my interests fluctuate throughout my life like crazy. And like, this is probably one of the longest and deepest interests I've had in a while. I've had some other like deep ones that last a long time too. But like, eventually you do get to the point where you're just like, okay, I'm ready to move on. And like, we're talking about ults here, we're talking about K-pop in general, we're talking about everything. Eventually that'll happen, and it's something to look back and admire and remember
Yeah.
and feel happy about, and like, you know, just the next phase.
I'm just so curious like when that'll be, just because like tune our own taste horns here, but like K-pop, they do stuff every single day.
Yeah.
Stuff is like nonstop coming out for so many different groups, so many different concepts, sounds coming from this like one genre. So I don't know, like I'm so happy with like what they give us.
When it comes to music specifically, I don't think I will ever stop listening to Korean music.
Yeah, like even if I'm not like so heavily into this whole like K-pop world, keeping up with
Or
every
like
little
idols
thing,
in general. Yeah,
I'd probably still like listen to the music
Yeah.
a good bit.
I would too. Because genuinely that sound of music is just what I enjoy.
When we're
Yeah.
old and we're like,
I was still bopping. Oh, listen.
I'm 80 in my rocking chair, baby.
But
Come on.
I will be playing Killing Me by Icon to all of the children. It's a bop. They're going to their parties, their high school parties where they're
Oh.
jamming. That's the one I'm playing. So similar to your... Okay, no, not similar. I have to... Listen, this is scary territory. This is really scary. And I'm not saying anything right now. Nothing is on the record.
Not me
Nothing
with
is being
women.
changed. Yeah. Yeah. I am very ult ATs as my like ult group, and my ult biases are Taemin and Songhwa. I don't have any intention of changing any of those anytime soon, but Ace as a group is very ult potential for me, to the point where it's kind of scary, because I can't imagine not ulting ATs. But also, when Ace is fully back and fully doing comebacks, I do wonder what is going to happen to my mental state. So we will see how that goes. Also, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, your ult bias is in your ult group.
Exactly.
So there's, like, an attachment there, whereas like, none of mine are currently mixing. There's no, like, overlap with mine. So, like, I feel like there's an additional, like, oh, I don't want to get rid of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, like, I fully understand your, like, stress over it because, like, you feel like you were, like, breaking up with something.
Yeah, it's
because,
terrible.
like, I said bye to BTS.
I know, right? Well, and it's just weird because it's like, I know more about ATs than I know about any other group. So I'm like, the audacity to, like, put that aside for someone else. But again, it's something that you can't really choose. I feel like it, like, if you're loving them to the level of an ult, that's just kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, we'll see what happens, but honestly, I feel like they truly have the potential to possibly do that. Also, when it comes to idols, Xiaojun has been very scary lately, and my problem is that he's one of those secret ones that we've been talking about, because he crept in on me before I even got into NCT. He crept in on me when I was getting into NCT, and then he was like, haha, I'm your bias, you can't look at anybody else. Like, I'm here, and I'm like, okay, heard, buddy, I'm not mad. And then he has not left my brain since, and it is just, like, getting worse and worse as time is going on. I just absolutely adore everything about him, and it does make me a little nervous because I have learned from other people's experiences of idols sneaking up on them and becoming ults and becoming biases, and I'm like, this sounds like it could possibly be a problem. So as of right now, I'm okay, but again,
on your way to 3 ults.
Ugh, it's scary.
See, you just want me to say yes to Jungkook so you can say yes to Xiaojun.
See, the problem is, though, is I wouldn't say yes right now. Even if we were more like, yeah, absolutely 3 ults,
Sure.
I still would be like, no, not yet. Like, it's not there yet. But yeah.
These two asked us if they were our ults. Because why would I say no to their face?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say no to any
I
idol.
would say literally none of them. If they asked me, I'd be like, absolutely, I have your face all over my wall.
Yeah.
Is that what you wanted? Is that what you wanted to hear from me? It's weird. Anyway, this is such, like, interesting territory because we haven't, again, like you can tell from this ramble of words going on, we're still figuring this out for ourselves and what this even means and what it could potentially do. So just throwing that in there. We'll probably expand on this later because I'm sure it's just going to be one of those things that keeps poking at us until we are forced to acknowledge it. So anyway, let's wrap up this episode with our song of the moment. This week it is going to be
Spark by Demon, specifically spelled DXMON.
We stumbled across this group randomly and really enjoy them. They have kind of like the style of Japanese groups. They're Korean, but like they have that style in their sound of music and their fashion, and it's just really cool, really refreshing, and the music is really good.
And then also shout out to Burn Up, which is like pre-release. It was really good as well, and just like a different style from this song.
I'm definitely excited to see what they continue to release in the future, but definitely go check them out if you haven't heard of them already. And if you want to shout out your favorite song for the song of the moment, as well as participate in more of our podcast segments, you can join us over on Patreon. As always, you can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at The Lunapod, and on Instagram at The Luna Podcast for up-to-date information on episode releases and behind-the-scenes fun. We post all sorts of content, so definitely make sure to follow us and check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Bye! I want all of my Gen Z to come out in that episode.
Oh, sorry. What was I saying? What was I saying after the